For the last few weeks on Mixed Media Masters, we've been playing around with acrylic paint effects and textures, and we're going to do something similar this week, except we're going to explore how to create a foundational background quickly that we can use to create our other masterpieces. Hello makers, and welcome to Spectiva Studios. If this is your first time here, then welcome. Good to have you here. If you love talking about art and making creative things using all sorts of mixed media tools, this might be the place you want to stop by on a regular basis. We drop a video every single week. We'd love to have you subscribe so we can talk to you some more. Now, as promised, this week, one of the challenges that we run into periodically when we're creating things is sometimes we really don't just want a blank sheet of paper as a starting point. We want something that has a little bit of color in it that's going to allow us to really build on top of that. So what I wanted to share with you today are 5 ways that we can create a foundation of color or design or texture that is really going to be the first step in another piece of artwork. I'm going to show you some different things we can do. Our first technique, I have a ramekin here. I'm going to grab some of my blue acrylic paint and drop it in the ramekin. I don't need too much. What I'm trying to do is I'm going to create, in essence, a wash. I want to create something that's going to give me just a sense of color without being super saturated. So let me come in here. I'm going to do the same thing. I have some purple. Put it in here, about the same amount. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a generous supply of water to both of these. And we're going to get a wash. I don't want this to really come across as being paint by the time I'm done. So I'm going to grab a paintbrush and I'm going to just stir, get this pigment mixed into my water. I'll do the same thing with the blue. Try to get the paint all dissolved into the water. Now, as I've talked about in the past, we don't necessarily want to water our paint way down if we're using it to try to stretch the paint, because first of all, it thins the pigment out, but second of all, it destroys the binder of the paint. It doesn't stick as well to your canvas or to paper or anything else. But in this scenario, that's going to matter fairly, well, not much at all. Because what we're simply doing here, and by the way, you'll notice I put a protective sheet down on my work table here, because what I'm really trying to do is I want to just take this wash that we have now, and I want to just kind of pour it and make a bit of a puddle here. And maybe just take my paper and kind of steer my little droplets of color around. Okay? Might need to kind of go in there and maybe get my finger to break the surface tension a little bit, get this somewhat wet. But the objective is I want to get color on the background that is not going to be the dominant color. It's just simply going to be a starting color for whatever we end up doing with this piece of paper. And again, make sure you protect your work surface unless you want to get, you know, watery paint on everything. All right, now that we have that a little bit, I'm going to just kind of splash some more of the purple in here, splash a little bit of the blue in here. And by the way, one of the things I'll mention also, depending on the type of paper you're using, when it gets wet, I should say, when it gets wet, it may have the tendency to curl. So being able to pull it back into position, and again, we can use our fingers to kind of smear and get the dry areas here. But holding it down or having something that can hold it down while it dries will give you what you need. But the objective here is very simple. It's about creating a wash that we can put onto our paper. So instead of starting with a basic white sheet of paper, in this case, once we've kind of gone through this, we're going to have something that has more purples and blues in it as a starting point. So we'll let that dry. We'll see what it looks like. But let's go and take a look at technique number 2. Now for our next technique, I'm going to use a tool that I've used in a lot of my projects, and that is a Breer. Now a Breer is really just a platen roller. It allows us to pick up paint or ink and to transfer it from point to point. And it's used traditionally to be able to, for printmaking, where you want to get a thin layer of your paint or your ink, and then you put it on your linoleum block or on your printing press or whatever you do. And so that's what this tool does. Now, if you've looked in the gallery and have seen the Obtuse Angels collection, this is really the foundation that I use for most things there. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So once again, if I just working with a sheet of paper here, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to drop in some basic colors. And I'm going to be fairly stingy here. I don't want to get too much paint in here because this paper is not so big. But I'm going to put some color in here like this. I've got some blue in here as well. Let's see if we can get some of that down. And again, another kind of just let's mix that in. And we'll go with those 2 colors. I may add a third color just for fun. But with the Breer now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to my paper and I'm simply going to roll over the paint that I've put down here. Okay? And so in doing so, you can see it creates a very interesting effect, and I can kind of pick up some of the paint that I've left up here at the top, and I can start down here at the bottom, and I can roll on the background again. I can even come backward if that's what I want to do. And what it allows me to do very quickly is to cover a large piece of paper. Even this small one gets covered very quickly. And again, the objective for this video is to create backgrounds that we can start with as the foundation for something else. So by creating this background, if I want to come in now maybe with a darker color like a black or something to really paint on top of it, again, I'm not starting with a white piece of paper as my blank canvas. I'm starting with something that already has some foundation and some texture and something interesting going on in it. Anyway, simple process, Breer. It needs cleaning afterwards, but that will allow us to get to creating something that's really going to be an interesting jumping off point for any of the other projects we might be starting. Let's take a look at technique number 3. Now for technique number 3, we're going to do something to make sure that we can get our backgrounds done pretty quickly. I'm a busy guy. I've got stuff to do. So I'm going to use one of my favorite techniques, which is a kitchen sponge, just a standard kitchen sponge. I'm going to just take mine and cut it into a smaller piece. I don't need the big thing. So this will work for my needs. And I want to make sure it's damp because that's going to help us to move what we need to move. And again, it's really about mixing colors together. So let me, I have a little bit of red here. I'm not going to get too extreme with the colors once again, since I have a limited amount of paper to put them on. But let's get a couple drops in here. We'll get the red up here. And what else do I have? I have some yellow here. This will blend it nicely. And we'll get that in there. Come on. There you go. There's some yellow. And I'm going to use, I have a blue that I want to add in here. Kind of an aqua blue-green, if you will. See how this works. I'm going to put that right down there like that. Okay, so I have some basic colors on my paper, but now what I want to do is I want to blend them together. And we've talked about blending techniques using paintbrushes and how much moisture we should have. A wet sponge does a really good job. So I'm going to start with my brighter colors, or my less bright color, my yellow first, because I don't want to get this all messied up with the green color when we start moving it around. But I'm going to come in and I'm just basically just painting it on the page. I'm just spreading it around. And now that I've gotten that done, I can pick up some of this blue color. And again, I'm going to kind of work down here. But when I get to the overlap between the colors, I'm going to try to blend it in best I can. Now again, you might find yourself in the need for a little bit of moisture in some of these blendy areas. So you can just drop it in there, do yourself that favor. And so I can create a better demarcation between my yellow and my green if I want to make it a little bit softer. I can also turn my sponge around if I have part that's already covered with paint. Actually, I'm going to turn my paper around just so I can reach it easier. And let's do the same thing with the red color. Come in here, and again, we're just moving that paint around. We're moving that pigment around, and we're going to fill in all the spots and cover up my fingerprints, which I'm leaving here. But again, if I want to come in between the red and the yellow, and kind of create an interesting blend between those two areas, I can do that as well. Now this is a very, very straightforward approach, and what I'm creating here again is not designed to be a final masterpiece. It's really designed to be a jumping off point, a starting point for another piece of art that I want to create. And again, laying down a foundation allows me to start to put black colors on here, darker colors, even white, but things that this will be the foundation again, as opposed to just a standard straight piece of white paper. All right, so sponge, really, really simple way to do it. You can wash these and reuse them a whole bunch of times as well. And then again, if you want to just cut new pieces off, these aren't incredibly expensive and you can get a lot of effect out of it. I just find from a blending technique, it's often a lot faster and easier than just using a paintbrush. So there we go. That is our third technique. Come on back, let's check out number 4. For our next technique, we're going to explore what happens when you use a standard house painting brush. So I have a big brush, it's a 4-inch brush, and what I want to do here is something that's going to make it very easy once again for me to blend my colors. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I've got a couple of ramekins in here that's some thinned down, some fairly wet paint. And what I want to do is I'm just going to reach my paintbrush in on one side, and I'm going to reach my paintbrush in on the other side. And what I want to do is create, if you can see there, kind of a two-tone effect on my paintbrush. Now this paint is fairly wet, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of start and I'm going to paint it across. I'm going to paint it across and back and forth like this. And we're going to get a blend, and then I'm going to come down and do it like that. And I can flip it over if I wanted to and be able to kind of just create a blend that way. But the objective, again, is to create something that is not a blank piece of paper that's going to have an interesting effect on it. Probably should have taped this down before I started. But we can create something, again, that is going to be kind of interesting. And again, if I want to come back in here and actually get some more blue, because it's getting washed out, I can pick up some additional paint and put that where I want it to go. Right? So again, maybe overkill a 4-inch brush for a 5-inch piece of paper, but it does the trick, it does it quickly, and now once that dries, I have a jumping off point and something I can build something else on. All right, one more technique to go right after this. Our last technique is really a lot of fun, mostly because you never really know what you're going to get. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I have a number of just small bottles of acrylic paint here, and I'm just going to leave some drops on my piece of paper here. I'll just do a drop there, how about a couple down here? Just make it interesting. And I'm going to add some additional colors. I've got some yellow in here. Let's do that. And so yellow. Here we go. There's some yellow. And get some drops in here as well. And also I have this teal, my green teal. That's going to balance nice against these colors that are in here. And I'll kind of do one of these. How about that? And one more color. I have an orange. I think we'll brighten it up. Again, there's no right answer on the colors. Some are going to work better than others, obviously, if you know a little something about color theory. But in this case, we just want to get some basic colors down. Now I'm going to get my my protecting sheet, because this is going to require a little bit of table protecting. Because what I want to do now is I want to reach in, and I'm working with a squeegee. This is a block squeegee. It's used for things like screen printing. You can use a bathroom squeegee. You can use a spatula. You can use a scraper for what we're doing here. And then generally what I want to be able to do is reach my squeegee out here. I'm going to hold my paper down so it doesn't move on me. And I'm simply going to drag down through the paint that I've already put on here. And I'm going to create a foundation of color that is going to be really my starting point. Now if I wanted, I could pick this up and I could fill in the white areas. I think I might leave it that way just because it's kind of interesting the way it is. So again, I love this technique because we end up with some results that are really eye-catching, I think. It is a little messy, so you want to make sure, again, you're protecting your work surface and you're able to come in here and clean your things pretty quickly. This is going to require a bath in the sink at some point before too long to get a lot of this stuff out. But again, what we're doing here is we're creating a background. We're creating a foundation that's going to allow us to have a jumping off point. Now this, quite frankly, it could be a finished piece of artwork by itself if we want to do that. But we can also come in here and decorate it. I can use anything else. I could use more acrylic paint. I can come in here with India inks. I can come here with pencil and crayons and really design and do things to this piece of artwork. Again, the objective of this video is how do we not start with just a white piece of paper and instead start with something that's going to make life a little bit more interesting for us in the long run. And again, we've taken a look at a couple of different possibilities here. We've taken a sponge wash, we've taken a brush wash, we've used ourselves a Breer, and we've done something that's a lot more subtle, but it gives us some subtle colors to work with here and just creating a paint wash of sorts. Anyway, that has been the goal of this video. Thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you enjoy this and you got something out of it. Again, if this is the kind of thing you enjoy, we think you'd love to be a subscriber. We drop a video every single Friday morning and we'd love to have you along for the ride. Anyway, that's all I have for you this week. Thanks so much for dropping by. This is Spider. I'll see you next time.